Hello, everyone. My name is Jenny. I'm going to go ahead and get started with the presentation today titled Making Resolutions That Stick. And it's that time of year when a lot of us make some resolutions for the new year or at least set some goals for the new year. So I'm hoping today is a presentation that gives you some strategies to be successful in whatever those goals are. As I said before, my name is Jenny Reilly. I'm a licensed professional counselor, a certified alcohol and drug counselor, and I work with Preferred EAP. Also on the call is my colleague Tyler. He's going to be helping moving the slides to the next slide, and he'll also be monitoring the question box on the right side of your screen. You should have a little place where you can ask questions. We're going to save questions till the end, but if anything that pops up as we're going through, feel free to put it in there and then we can address it near the end. Next slide. So some of the most common resolutions tend to have to do with health and finances. So a lot of times people will want to make resolutions related to their diet, starting to exercise, losing weight, sometimes mindfulness, creating some sort of daily mindfulness habit, quitting smoking or abstaining from drugs or alcohol, or cutting back on drugs or alcohol. Emotional regulation, sometimes people will make attending therapy a goal for the new year. And then usually with finances, saving money is a big one. Next slide. So when I was looking into how successful people are in keeping their New Year's resolutions, I kind of didn't think too successful just based on a personal experience, but I was surprised to learn that it was this low. So only 9 to 12% of Americans are successful in maintaining their New Year's resolution at the end of that following year. So that begs the question, why is the success rate so low? Next slide. So these are the most common reasons why people don't succeed. The first is making an unrealistic goal. Maybe the expectation is just one that's not very plausible of meeting in the first place. The second thing is not keeping track of progress. So maybe you have a goal and you're only looking for that end result, and when you don't see that quickly, you kind of fall off and don't continue on. The third thing is forgetting about that resolution or goal. A lot of times, as you'll learn more about in this presentation, almost half of what we do every day is done out of habit. And with that being said, sometimes if you don't have a very good plan or a specific plan, you might not be thinking every day about what that goal is. So you'll just kind of fall back into those old patterns. The other thing is making too many resolutions. Sometimes people want to get healthy and they'll make 4 really big goals all at the same time. They want to quit smoking, they want to start exercising, they want to go on a diet, and it's just too much change. It's kind of like setting yourself up for failure. The other thing is being too large or vague with a resolution. So sometimes people will think like, okay, I want to be healthy, but what does that mean? What does that look like for you? That is such a vague goal that it could mean anything. So if you're not very specific, it's easy to kind of get lost and fall off the wagon with that. The last thing is not planning ahead. So most of us are very busy with work, family lives, social obligations. So if you don't have a good plan in place, there's a really good chance that those feelings of being overwhelmed are going to kind of take over and you won't necessarily get to follow through with whatever you had in mind. Next slide. So the goals of today's presentation is to first normalize the challenges associated with making lasting change. Sometimes people are their own worst enemy and they get really down on themselves if they don't meet whatever goal they have in place. And that negativity kind of just makes it even more unlikely that you're going to be successful in making whatever change you want to make. Hopefully, as we go through the slides, you're able to identify personally what your own what and why change statement is. So what is the goal? What is the resolution? But also why? Why is that important to you? Why is that something you want to achieve? And a lot of times it's the why that pushes you through on those days when maybe you really don't feel like doing whatever it is your resolution is. The third thing is consider the typical pitfalls and plan ahead. So most people have made resolutions in the past or made goals in the past and they haven't been successful. So thinking about why was it? Why did that happen last time? How did I get out of my routine with that? And then kind of making a plan to have that not happen this time around. We're going to discuss the role of the brain and why trying to make a change is so hard. We're also, as we talk about the different things with the brain, we're going to kind of try to use what we know to create strategies that will improve the chance of being successful with making change. And then the last thing is discussing practical strategies for making lasting change. Next slide. So this graph is really great. It shows what change actually looks like. And I think this kind of sums up a big reason why people don't stick with whatever their resolution is. So that top line you see starts off, it's a really even increase. So you start seeing results right away. And that's what we call the line of our expected results. So a lot of times when we make a goal, if it's to exercise or to stick to a healthy diet or something, we kind of expect that as soon as we start making that change, that we're going to start noticing a difference. And we're monitoring for that difference, sometimes on a daily basis, sometimes on a weekly basis. And when it's not realized, we have what that brown shaded area, which is the valley of disappointment. That bottom line is what actual results look like. And notice that there's quite a bit of time that goes by without there being any noticeable results. And as time goes on, the results kind of shoot up towards the end there. We call that sharp, where it starts to really shoot up, the critical threshold. And a lot of times, if you're able to make it to that point where you pass that critical threshold, you're going to stick with whatever change you've made because you're going to really notice the benefits at that point. So I think just having a really good idea of, I'm going to make this change and there's going to be a period of time where maybe I don't notice anything different. If you go into that with that expectation, you're not going to have, hopefully, the disappointment involved, and you're going to be able to stick on a lot longer and see those benefits and not fall into that valley of disappointment there. Next slide. This is a graph that just shows the case for small changes. So if you've read any magazines or articles online or self-help stuff, I think a point that's been mentioned a lot of times over the years is to start really small, and that every good little choice you make really matters. But I think that's really hard for a lot of people to buy into. There's this idea that if you don't make a big change or like a grand gesture, that it's just you're not gonna notice anything. And this graph just shows if you were to make 1% improvement every day, where you would end up over time. And you notice that just 1% on a daily basis, again, you don't see the results right away. It takes a bit for that line to start increasing. But you end up in a very different place if you continue with that. And so keeping that in mind, on those days when maybe you're not, I don't know, maybe you go to a family party and there's just a whole bunch of food that you end up eating and you didn't want to eat it. Like every good choice you make that day, whether it's to have some of the vegetables or something like that, it matters in the long run. So those are two things to kind of just keep in the back of your head so that you set yourself up for success. Next slide. So we want to get specific with what your change statement is. So if your goal is, I want to lose weight, and the why is because you want to feel better about yourself, get even more specific than that. Like, what does that look like? What does feeling better about yourself mean? Does it mean that you have more stamina and when you take the stairs at work, you're not out of breath when you get there? Does it mean that come the summertime when you get in your bathing suit, you feel more confident or better about yourself? Be very specific with it, because that's going to be the thing that kind of motivates you to keep going with whatever the goal is. Next slide. the 5-second rule. So I wanted to add this in because this is something I hear a lot when I do my EAP counseling with individuals. A lot of times you might have a lot of really good ideas of what you want to do in terms of making change, but you don't ever have the time to follow through on it. So you might have the thought while you're driving to work, I should do this thing. And then you kind of forget about it. You're not in the place to do it. And then, you know, it goes on without getting done. And that can feel really defeating. So this 5-second rule says within 5 seconds of having the thought of I should do whatever, do something about it. So set a reminder in your phone. If you want to look into something, or if you want to sign up for something that's going to help with whatever your goal is, maybe you put a reminder in for 8 o'clock at night, because that's when you're able to sit down and really have time to do it. If you're not as tech savvy or you don't always have your phone on you, you can keep a pen and paper in a convenient place. Where is it that you normally have these thoughts? Is it while you're cooking dinner? Is it while you're driving? And put that pen and paper there so when you get to a place where you can write it down, it's convenient. If it's something that takes 2 minutes or less to complete, like you have a thought of maybe getting something out of the freezer so you can make dinner later, or picking up the blankets around the living room, something small like that, do it right away. If it's 2 minutes or less and you have the time, do it immediately. It just increases your feeling of effectiveness and efficiency, and can just really make a difference in terms of how you feel. And just recognizing that most of us can't rely on our brain to remember everything we want to accomplish in a day, because there's just distraction everywhere. There's a lot going on with work, with your home life. If you're on social media, there's just stuff vying for your attention all the time. So this is something to just help you be a little bit more efficient. Next slide. So systems versus goals. Obtaining better results is more about your process than it is setting your goal or setting your resolution. You don't rise to the level of your goals, but you fall to the level of your system. So the problem with resolutions or goals is first to say that winners and losers have the same goals. Just making a goal does not make you successful, right? As we all know. So it's not so much about the goal setting that leads to being successful. It's what is the process, the system you have in place to get there. The other issue with resolutions is that achieving a goal is only a momentary change. So once you accomplish it, now what? You just go back to what it was before. If you do that, you're going to probably end up in the place you were before. The third thing is goals can restrict happiness. Sometimes people will have in their mind like, oh, I'll be happy once I own my own home, or I'll be happy when I have this much money saved, or I'll be happy when I weigh this much. And when you have that mindset, it's kind of very restrictive versus thinking like, okay, well, what is my system to get to that goal? And recognizing that you can have happiness and joy along that journey to get there. And the last thing is that goals can interfere with long-term progress. Sometimes people work really hard to get to a goal, they get there, and then they kind of fall off the wagon with whatever they were doing to get there. Next slide. So there's 3 layers of behavior change. The most superficial or shallow layer is outcomes, and that's what you get. That's just kind of focusing on what's the result. The second layer is processes, and that's focusing on what are you doing? What are you doing to get that result? And the third most interior layer is identity, and that's what you believe about yourself. And research shows that if you focus on who you want to be rather than what you want to achieve, that you're going to be a lot more likely to follow through with what those goals are. Behavior that is incongruent with the self will not last. So an example here is somebody who maybe their job is they're a wellness coach, or they're somebody who helps people make healthy decisions. You know, how likely is it that they're going to be a smoker? Probably not super likely. Why? Because they're educating people every day on how to get well, and then they're engaging in a behavior that they know is something that won't make them be well. Your identity emerges out of your habits. So every action you do is a vote for the type of person that you wish to become. So considering that, and if you kind of can come up with an identity statement of who you are, how you want to identify yourself, that can really help clarify, like, okay, is this behavior something that's going to help me get there and is in line with who I am, or is this something that goes against who I am? Next slide. So a lot of this information comes from the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. If you find that this presentation interesting, I encourage you to read the book because he goes through a lot of really great examples to further drive home these points and help you understand. He talks about the 4 parts of a habit, and they are cue, craving, response, and reward. And the 4 laws to creating good habits are to make the cue obvious, to make the craving attractive, something that you want to do, to make the response something easy, and to make whatever the reward is to be something satisfying. Now, if your goal is to break a bad habit, something that isn't working for you, you want to kind of do the opposite, and you want to make the cue invisible. You want the craving to be something that's unattractive to you. You want the response to be something that's hard for you to do, and you want the reward to not be a reward at all. You want it to be something that's very unsatisfying. And we're going to kind of break these down as we move forward. Next slide. So before you get into setting a resolution or a goal, it's important to check on what your current system is. So as I stated before, pretty much half of what we do in a day is done out of habit. And habits are things that we kind of just do subconsciously, like we're not even totally aware of it when we're doing that. So a way to become aware is to do something called a habit scorecard. And so a way that you could do this is to create a list of your morning routine and rate each thing you do in the morning as good, bad, or neutral. And not in like a judgmental way to make yourself feel bad about things, but more just like, okay, is this a behavior that helps me become more of who I want to be? Is this something that's kind of just neutral? Or is this something that I really would like to change or doesn't help me be more the person I want to be? And the goal of this is to just bring awareness of what some of your habits already are, because it's helpful to know this before you try to create new ones. Pointing and calling is a system that they use in Japan on their railway system. And the people who run that railway, before they do whatever their tasks are, they point to it, to the thing that they're going to do, and they say it out loud. And the reason they do this is because it brings that awareness. And in doing so, it decreases incidents. It makes them be very safe because they're constantly bringing these things they do on a daily basis into their consciousness and awareness. So it's kind of the same idea with this, bringing what are you already doing into your awareness, and then having a clearer mind to kind of realize what changes you might want to make. Next slide. So for cue, we want to make it obvious. So the best way to start a new habit is to be very specific and have a statement of something like, I will do this behavior at this time in this location. So an example would be, I will go for a walk at 4:30 p.m. in my neighborhood. Why is it important to be that detailed? Because it takes all of the guesswork out of it. If your goal was to, I'm going to start exercising, what does that mean? When? What kind of exercise? Are you going to go to the gym? Are you going to go outside? Are you going to stay home? Like, there's so many questions. And a lot of times, people will try to do health things for themselves outside of work. And after work, people are tired. You don't want to make decisions. And if you are faced with having to make decisions, a lot of times you're just going to say, whatever, I'm just not going to follow through. So having a very specific plan takes that guesswork out. It also takes out this hope that you're going to be motivated at the right time, because a lot of times if it's after work, you're probably not going to be very motivated. It also prevents us from saying yes to requests that would derail us from that goal. Another strategy is something called habit stacking. So that's when you think of a habit you're already doing, and then you add a new habit onto that. So after I start the coffee pot in the morning, I'm going to go make my bed. So you already start your coffee pot every morning. You're just adding something onto it. While your coffee's brewing, you're going to go make your bed. So the goal here is to be very specific. Next slide. Environment. So the other thing with making your cue obvious, whatever the goal is, if it's something to increase your health, let's say you want to eat more fruits and vegetables, having a bowl of fruit on your counter, you're making that very obvious for you. The inverse is true for bad habits. You want to make those cues invisible. So if you want to abstain from drinking alcohol or cut down from drinking alcohol, you might hide it. You might put it in a cabinet where it's not out of sight, or get it out of the house so you're not seeing it. So make the things, if you want to exercise, you might put your sneakers right by your door so that they're easily accessible and visible. Research has shown that disciplined people have a more disciplined environment, and therefore they don't have to resist temptation as much. So keeping that in mind, it's never a good strategy to have self-control be the strategy, because as we know, daily stressors come up, bad days happen. A lot of times it's in those moments when we're going to fall back into old habits that don't necessarily serve us. So getting those temptations out of the environment is a really good place to start. Something else that's just a good tidbit to know is that it's easier to build new habits when you're in a new environment, because you're not fighting against whatever those old cues are. So an example here, if you're a smoker and you get a new job in a new location with new people, that's a really good time to try to quit smoking, because you're not going to be tempted to go out with the same group of people that you might go out with for breaks. You're not going to have the same environment cues around you that might have been the thing that told you to get up and go out. So just keeping that in mind. Next slide. You want the goal to be something that's attractive to you. So research shows that desire for something releases more dopamine in your brain, that feel-good chemical in your brain, than the actual attainment of it. So they did a study with people who were planning vacation, and then when they were actually on vacation, and their brain released more dopamine in the planning process, just thinking about it. So what does this mean? This means that you want to be thinking about something that you really want. So one way to make something attractive that maybe you don't really enjoy doing is through temptation bundling. So that's when you pair an action that you really want to do with an action that you need to do. An example here would be exercise. A lot of people don't exercise because exercise is work, right? You might feel better when you're done, but in order to get started and to actually do it, it's work. So a way to temptation bundle this would be to have, like, maybe there's a TV show you like to watch, or a podcast, or a book you really like to read, and you're going to pair that with the exercise. So you're only going to do those things when you're at the gym on the treadmill. And that's a way to kind of incentivize going to the gym and exercising. You're now excited to go because you really want to listen to your podcast or watch your show. When you want to change bad habits, you want to make it unattractive to you. So let's say that you want to quit smoking because it's not good for your lungs. So if you have a picture of smoker's lungs in your car or wherever it is that you're most tempted to smoke, seeing that is going to be an automatic turnoff of I don't want to do this thing. Another strategy is to join a culture where your desired behavior is the norm and you already have something in common with the group. So, a good example of this would be like joining AA if you wanted to stop drinking, or joining an exercise group if you wanted to develop an exercise routine. Next slide. So I included this because this is something else that comes up when I'm doing EAP counseling. So a lot of times when I ask, like, what are your coping skills or what do you do to relax? People will say that they go on their phone, and they recognize that it's not necessarily the best thing for them. They recognize that it's not really restorative. It's mindless, it's maybe a bit relaxing, but it doesn't really make them feel that great. And there's a bit of a frustration of like, I don't know why I do it. I know I would feel better if I did something else, but I'm still doing this behavior. And so this points out that every behavior we do has a surface level craving and a deeper underlying motive. And what these social applications have done is they've made it very, very easy to go on them and to feel like we are that we're getting an answer to a desire that we have. So an example here would be like Tinder. Tinder is a way to find love. Like everybody has a desire usually to find love and to reproduce. Tinder satisfies that in a very easy way. Facebook satisfies the need to try to connect and bond with others. Instagram makes us feel socially accepted and approved of. Google searches can help reduce uncertainty. Video games can help us achieve status and prestige. So these apps make it very easy to feel these bits of to have these needs met in a very low effort way. And I think that's why so many of us keep going back to them, because it doesn't require much effort and it can give us that little bit of a boost. And if you find yourself unhappy with going on them, or you feel like I wish I didn't go on them as often, something to consider is there another way to get this need met? Could I try something different that would maybe make me feel a bit better? Next slide. So why is change really hard? Change is hard because our real motivation as human beings is to be lazy and to do what is convenient. And this is a very smart strategy. If we think about where we were as a species hundreds, thousands of years ago, we needed to conserve our energy because so many things required so much effort and energy. Energy is precious and we're wired to conserve it wherever possible. In our modern day society, we can kind of conserve it to an unhealthy degree, which is why a lot of our resolutions are around doing things that do require more work because we recognize it will benefit us in the long run. But keeping this information in mind, the less energy a habit requires, the more likely it is to occur. So consider scrolling on our phones or watching TV. This is what a lot of people do to unwind or relax, and it's because it's the easiest thing to do. The amount of time that you perform a habit is not as important as the number of times that you've performed it. So this is important because you can pick something that's very easy in terms of a goal, and that's probably better because you're going to be able to do it a lot of times than it is to make a lofty goal that takes up more time. So an example would be if your goal is to exercise 3 times a week for an hour each time, maybe it would be better to do exercise twice a day for 10 minutes at a time, because that's increasing that frequency and you're still getting a lot more exercise in your routine. Next slide. We want the action to be easy when we're thinking of making a resolution or a goal. So you want to focus on taking action, not just being in motion. And you want to find ways to reduce friction with good habits and increase friction with bad ones. So, and you want to prime your environment to make future actions easier. So an example I have here is meal prep. So if you want to cook more healthy meals at home, perhaps you take some more time on the weekend to prep some of those things so that when you get home from work during the week, it's very easy to pop them in the microwave, or you're already halfway done preparing the meal and it's easy to follow through with what your goal was. If you want to eat healthier, perhaps you don't buy junk food anymore. So now if you really want it, you have to leave your house to go get it. That's a way to increase friction with a bad habit. Next slide. So the 2-minute rule kind of goes back to that that chart that we looked at in the beginning, where it was like if you make 1% improvement every day. So keeping in mind that 40 to 50% of what we do on any given day is done out of habit, this kind of shows the good day, bad, like good day, bad day, good choice, bad choice. So every time we make a good choice, we're increasing the chance that we're going to have what we call a good day. And the 2-minute rule says that a new habit should take less than 2 minutes to do, because the point is to master the habit of showing up. The secret is always to stay below the point where it feels like work. You want to standardize a habit before you optimize, because you can't improve on a habit that doesn't exist yet. So thinking very small steps here, because that's going to increase the chance that you're going to actually engage. And the more that you engage, the more frequent you can do it. The more frequent you can do it, you now have a habit. Now you're at a point where you can kind of improve on that habit. Next slide. So some examples of the 2-minute rule would be, if you want to start reading before bed each night, you might start with reading 1 page before bed each night. If you want to do 30 minutes of yoga a day, you might start with taking out your yoga mat and doing one stretch. If you want to study a certain amount of times a week, you're going to start with getting out your notebooks, maybe reading the first couple lines. If you want to do the dishes every night, you're going to start with washing one glass. If you want to run the mile, you're going to start with putting your sneakers on, maybe walking around your house. So these are what takes 2 minutes, starting there, start incorporating that into your week. And then from there, once you feel like you have a good routine going, you can increase and optimize. Next slide. So ways to make bad habits difficult. A commitment device is something that enables you to take advantage of good intentions before you fall victim to temptation. So an example would be asking the waiter to split your meal in half before they bring it to your table. So you're kind of thinking of strategies ahead of time to make that decision process easy and to reduce that temptation from falling into what maybe were the old habits that made you fail. Also considering one-time actions. These are decisions that you can make that can make, like, you do it one time and then the benefits continue. So an example would be buying blackout curtains for your room to improve your sleep quality, or enrolling in an automatic savings plan to help you save money. So thinking about, is there anything like that you can do that would kind of increase your chance of success? The other thing is using technology to automate our habits. Most of us use our phone frequently. A lot of people have smart devices in their home, like Amazon Echo or Google Home. These things can help us set reminders. They can help us with a lot of different things in terms of staying on track for your goal. So thinking about, is there ways that you can automate some of the stuff that you want to do that helps with that reminder piece? Next slide. So you want the reward to be satisfying. The cardinal rule of behavioral change is that what's immediately rewarded is repeated and what's immediately punished is avoided. So how can you make whatever if you're trying to set a goal or a resolution for health or for positive change, how can you make it immediately feel rewarded? So an example would be like if you complete an exercise, maybe you have a post-workout smoothie that's really delicious. So that's like your treat for that. Or maybe an example would be like if you decide to quit smoking, where are you going to put that money that you're saving? And maybe you put that money towards something that makes you feel good, like getting your nails done or something like that. Consequences of bad habits tend to be delayed and the rewards are immediate, which is why they're so hard to stamp out, because they generally immediately make us feel good and we don't feel the consequence till later on. The opposite is true of good habits. A lot of times the cost is right away, which is why it's hard to do. And we don't see the results or the benefits until much later on. So you want to try to immediately reinforce the good. And if you want to abstain from things that are bad for you, like make that avoidance visible. So an example would be if you want to stop eating out or you want to save money by not ordering takeout or something like that. If you normally do that 3 times a week and you don't want to do that anymore, 3 times a week when you're eating at home, maybe moving the money you would normally spend from your checking to a savings place. You're saving that money towards maybe a vacation or something that you really want. And that's making that abstinence from eating out as something that's very visible to you. Next slide. So some strategies to keep you motivated to stick with it. The first thing is habit tracking. And again, a lot of phones have apps to help you with this. But habit tracking, the important thing with this is tracking habits every single day, even on the days when maybe you know that you're not going to achieve your goal. Maybe you're going to be in a friend's wedding and you know that there's just not going to be time to exercise that day. Still tracking it. Research shows that people who track progress are more likely to improve, and it also keeps you more honest about your behaviors. It also just helps keep it more conscious, and so you're able to kind of tweak things wherever needed. It also increases motivation when you can see the progress. So it feels good to look at, a calendar and to see that you have every day checked off because you did what you wanted to accomplish. Another strategy is not to miss twice. So like let's say you have a goal for exercise and you get sick and you're not able to go to the gym because you don't feel well. So you don't go to the gym the first day because you feel really sick. Maybe the next day you feel a little bit better, but you're still not good enough to really exercise. So maybe make the goal something super small, like going out and getting your mail. That's showing up. You're still making an effort to show up to do something physical, so that habit is continued when you're feeling better and you can get back to what your normal routine is. Remember that showing up is more important than perfection. So like again, if let's say that you have a really busy schedule and you only have 20 minutes to exercise instead of the normal 45, still go, because you're reinforcing that repetitive nature that keeps you on track. Remember that measurement is only useful when it guides you and it adds context to the larger picture, not when it consumes you. So if you know that you're somebody that can get a bit obsessive with tracking things, maybe this isn't the best, strategy for you. It's only a good strategy if it helps keep you motivated, helps keep you feeling productive and good about yourself. Next slide. So how to make bad habits unsatisfying. We repeat bad habits because they serve us in some way. I don't even really like the term good or bad habits. It's more just things that maybe don't add to your life the way that you would like them to. But the best way to overcome this is to increase the speed of punishment associated with the behavior. And so one way to do this is to have an accountability partner. It could be something, it could just be stating your goal on Facebook out loud, that people are able to read and feeling like you need to follow through now because you kind of made it known to others. It could be having a specific friend or partner. It could be having a therapist, an EAP counselor, a wellness coach, a personal trainer, somebody that you are stating your goal to and where there's follow-up on it. And that can really help people stay motivated and stay on track and not fall off with whatever their goal is. There's also things called habit contracts. So like let's say you want to quit smoking and then you put in the habit contract with your partner that if you smoke a cigarette, you need to, I don't know, give this much money to a donation for something or something like that. So you can get creative in thinking about what are ways that would kind of keep you on track and keep you accountable to whatever your goal is. Next slide. Getting the odds in your favor. So you want to try to pick the right habit for your personality to help you maintain motivation and feelings of success. So ways to do this is to kind of ask yourself, like, what are things that are fun for you but maybe work for others? What are things that make you lose track of time? Where do you tend to get greater returns than the average person? What are things that come naturally to you? So an example here would be, personally, there was times where I would make a goal for exercise and I would make the exercise be running. I hate to run. I've always hated to run. And you can imagine how many weeks I succeeded in that. It was always like a couple. And so I started thinking about, like, if I want to really have an exercise routine, it needs to be something that I don't hate. And I realized I really like hiking. I like walking outside. I like that's really rejuvenating to me. So that's now my exercise goal. And I actually follow through with it because I enjoy it. So thinking about that for you, you don't want it to be, if you want to go on a diet and you really don't like a certain type of food, maybe going on a diet that stresses that as the most important food isn't the best idea for you. So thinking about what's going to work for you, what's probable that you're able to maintain over time. Next slide. The Goldilocks rule. So the Goldilocks rule states that the greatest threat to success isn't failure, but rather boredom. So anyone can work hard when you're motivated. A lot of times we're most motivated this time of year, right? When the new year starts, we start off strong and then it tends to dwindle as time goes on. It's that ability to keep going when work isn't exciting that tends to make the difference. So for the Goldilocks zone, like you don't want it to be, if you're doing a habit and you're maintaining success with it and it starts to be too easy or a bit boring, that's when you have to kind of go back to the drawing board and think about what can you change that will make this a little bit more challenging again. You want it to be just enough challenge that you feel really good about yourself when you do it, but not too much challenge that you get defeated and don't want to do it and it seems like work and you don't engage. Next slide. So reflection and review. As stated before, as habits become unconscious, we stop noticing little errors along the way. So it's really good to try to schedule like a reflection and review time. So let's say your goal was an exercise goal, maybe checking in after 6 months. Like, is your routine still working for you? Is it something that still makes you feel really good when you're done? If not, you might have to tweak it some. You might have to make it a little bit more challenging. You might switch up what exercises you're doing or the type of exercise that you're doing. Reflection and review allows us to remain conscious of our performance over time and make those adjustments where needed. So this is something that you can kind of pre-schedule with your goal, like put a reminder in your phone for a few months out, or that you're just kind of aware of as you're going through, and when you start to feel less satisfied with your performance, you can kind of check in and make any changes needed. Next slide. So I wanted to talk about opportunities for accountability because that's a strategy that we touched on. So as I said before, I'm a counselor with Preferred EAP. If you're watching this presentation, we're your company's EAP program. If you're an LVHN employee, you are entitled to 5 sessions per occurrence. What that means is basically like 5 sessions per issue. It is perfectly fine if you just wanted to use this as an accountability for something like this. Like you have a goal that you want to do, you kind of just want to have a check-in with somebody where you can follow up on progress. People use us for that all the time. We are not just for work-related issues. We are for pretty much every issue you can think of. If you're an LVHN employee, we also have wellness coaches. So that's somebody who can help more specifically if it's like related to diet or exercise or mindfulness, stress management, things like that. There's also My Total Health if you're an LVHN employee, and that just gives different incentives for completing different things. There's financial resources on there. There's different challenges that you can complete. And you can even get like different, like a gift card and prizes when you complete certain things. So if you want that extra encouragement or that accountability piece, these are all some great resources for you. If you're not an LVHN employee, thinking about like maybe just after EAP, just a general counselor or a personal trainer. These are all things that can kind of help with some of your goals. Next slide. Okay, so that concludes the presentation that I had. Is there any questions? Does anybody have any questions or comments about anything that I touched on? Tyler, did you see anything come in?
Just one question asking if the slide deck will be shared. We will send a follow-up email out either sometime tomorrow or early next week that we'll have the slide deck as well as a copy of the recording as well that you can share with colleagues at your leisure.
Great. Yeah, and like I said, oh, go ahead.
Otherwise, I didn't see any other questions that came in.
Like I said before, if you found any of this to be interesting, I hope you were able to take away at least 1 or 2 strategies that might help you in being successful in whatever your goal is. But if you found any of this interesting, I really encourage you to check out that book mentioned, James Clear, Atomic Habits, because he gives really great examples to kind of help keep you motivated and kind of buy into the fact that a lot of these changes that we want to make take time, and we need to kind of be patient with ourselves, have grace with ourselves, and give ourselves the time to make the changes that we want to make. But if there's no other questions, I thank you for joining me today. And I wish you all luck in achieving whatever goals that you set for yourself in 2023.
Thank you.